We laugh. We cry. We learn. But really, what doesn't kill you makes you better at managing clients and everyone. I'm Morgan Friedman, and this is Client Horror Stories.
Hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Client Horror Stories. After far too many reschedules, I am honored and excited to have the one and only Rich Wright with me today. How are you doing, Rich?
Doing all right, Morgan. How are you doing?
I'm happy that we didn't have to reschedule today.
For sure.
And I also want to say I really like that orange light behind you, the lantern, Halloween feel sets the perfect vibe for Client Horror Stories.
Cool. Very cool.
So let's jump in with my drink in hand, and I'm all excited to hear about your wackiest, most challenging client experience ever.
Yeah, this was one that was definitely off the wall. I wouldn't think that it would be taking place, but it did. And I guess that's just par for the course. I was doing some design work for Bacardi quite a few years ago. And through that work, I was introduced to a well-known musical act here in Metro Detroit.
Okay.
And they had seen what I had been doing with Bacardi and wanted me to design some outfits for an upcoming event for them, stage outfits and all of that. And I met with, kind of pitched myself, did that portfolio, show, all that kind of stuff that everybody wants to see when you're trying to sell yourself.
Yep.
So they agreed to work with me, explain to me what they wanted. Wanted some coordinating outfits and that type of stuff. And so I went ahead, took a deposit, got them to sign the agreement that we were going to move forward with progress and the process as well. And,
sounds good so far.
Yeah, we dove right into it. Picked out fabrics, got everything lined up, got all the band members measured, so that the suits that I was designing were going to fit correctly, all that kind of stuff. Got halfway through, and then what I would normally do with the client is do half up front, half once it's delivered. But with this particular client,
go ahead. Before you tell us what you did in this case, I just want to be clear for the audience. So for a band, you're designing their onstage outfits, is it?
Yes, absolutely.
I just want to say that is amazing. It sounds like one of these jobs that, at least in theory, is like fun and creative, and merges fashion and design and music, and so
exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, it absolutely is all of that. One of those scenarios where you're like, oh, this is very, very cool. I get to be creative. I get to come up with some stuff that's going to be seen across the industries.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a band. We won't name the band. So there's this nameless but famous band that hired you to design the costumes. And usually you get paid half up front, half afterwards.
Yep.
But in this case,
my intuitive spidey sense took over and said, I need to spread this out and make sure that I'm getting payments all the way through this process.
Actually, hold on. Before you go on, I want to explore your intuitive spidey sense.
Okay.
Because if your spidey sense told you, don't use the normal process, use this other stricter one, so you'll get paid more upfront. What do you think were these like subconscious clues, these things that you saw without realizing it up until this point that made you come up with this stricter strategy?
Well, whenever I'm meeting with a client, I'm sitting one-on-one with them.
Yes.
At this particular instance, I was dealing with all the band members. And so what I was getting the vibe of is that there were a few that were just easygoing, cool, calm, excited for the process. There were a couple that were wanting to, make stipulations and kind of tout their fame a little bit. And I've known and worked with many famous musicians here in the area that I'm at, and I've never really looked at them as being, superstars or get starstruck or anything like that. I just look at them as regular people that got cool jobs. They get paid a little bit more. That kind of thing.
That is a great attitude to have. Treat the celebrities like everyone else.
Exactly. And, I've never been one to look at it from that starstruck perspective, because when I was growing up, I had a cousin that played pro baseball. And so we get free tickets all the time to the games whenever he was in town. So I was introduced to fame early on.
Wow, that's a lesson that far too many people don't learn.
Yeah.
That, when you meet or you work with the famous people, being starstruck makes it hard to be productive or hard to have a real relationship with them.
Absolutely. So
by the way, wait, hold on. Sorry, I just really like diving in. Before you go on, I find it interesting that your spidey sense realized something was off, because instead of dealing with one person, you're dealing with a group. And when it's a group, you have different opinions, and some are easier and some are harder. What I just want to observe is that's a really interesting pattern that actually we've done more than 100 episodes now. I don't think this has come up explicitly before, where the danger of, instead of dealing with one person, dealing with a whole team of people. So to me, I've bought and sold a bunch of houses, and something that I've noticed is just buying a house, whenever it's owned by a whole group of people. A few years ago, I wanted to buy a house that was owned by 9 siblings that inherited from their parents. Beautiful old 19th century mansion, but the parents died, and it was the exact same sort of thing. Some of them were like, great price, let's sell it, and other ones were like, no, it's worth bazillions of dollars. And
right, exactly.
And these so basically what seems to happen is on a team or a commission, it kind of goes to the lowest common denominator. The one who is the most annoying and the worst and the least reasonable is the one who kind of controls it all.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And that's what was taking place. I was seeing it in real time.
You were seeing it.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay, so now your spidey sense took over, and instead of half up front, half afterwards, what did you propose to them?
I said, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to break this up into 3 increments. We're going to do a percentage to start. Once we get halfway through and we start doing the fittings, then there's going to be a second increment that's got to be paid for. And then the last increment can be paid once I deliver.
Okay, perfect. I've seen that set up many times, so very reasonable.
Yeah. And so we had got through that first 2 processes of getting to the point where we're doing fittings and making sure that, the way everything was designed is actually going to work for what they're trying to do with this event. Make sure that, they've got mobility and all that kind of stuff, because they're musicians, they're on stage, a lot of movement going on, a lot of instrument playing. So you've got to make sure that the garments fit them, look good, and are also functional. Because if they're not functional, they're going to have a hard time playing, and they're going to be uncomfortable. The music's not going to sound great. Show's not going to work well.
I've until this call, I've never thought about the design of clothing for musicians on stage, but you're totally right. If you're wearing huge furs, it's hard to put your hand in front of the guitar.
Yeah, exactly. And, that was part of the scenario that was taking place. Was their initial ideas were that they wanted these suits, jacket and pants. They wanted them to be skinny fit. So, you can only do so much in terms of skinny fit without having a stretch material. And the material that they picked out, it didn't have any stretch to it. So
Okay.
you can only go so tight before you're going to end up having a problem. And so get to that first fitting, get that second payment in, and they're starting to ask for more material to be taken out of the garment, wanting it to be a lot thinner, a lot skinnier, a lot less room and mobility, all these types of things. And trying to explain that to them, it made sense to those easygoing ones, right? But those ones who wanted to, be kind of the lead, the heads, the one who were making the decisions, to them, they wanted what they wanted. And that's all they wanted. They felt like, hey, we're paying for it. This is what we want. Give it to us.
By the way, I know nothing about clothing or fabrics, but it's interesting how in everything in life there's a sense everything is a trade-off. Okay, yeah. You want more of this, that means there'll just have to be less of this. You want like cooler, bigger things, okay, that means it'll be harder to move your hands to play instruments. And so it's not only interesting to me how everything is a trade-off of some sort, but also how many people don't realize that. Like these band members were like, we want it like this, but also to be able to do it like that. Hey, pick your poison.
Yeah, exactly. And the other part too is like they've aged. Okay, so when they started out, they were a certain size. Now they've aged. So as you age, your body doesn't stay the same. And you can't always have exactly what you had when you started out.
By the way, this is funny for so many reasons. First, this is funny on the personal level. I've also aged in the last 20 years, but I also see myself as 20 pounds less than I was. And I kind of refused to go on the scale recently because I know that the number will be 20 pounds higher than the number in my mind about my own weight. But what's even funnier about this is I have this, again, the kind of our story is can't reveal the culpable parties. So I just have this image in my mind of like some aging hair metal, but I loved hair metal bands when I was a kid. But now like one of my little kids was like, Daddy, have you ever heard of this band Bon Jovi? And I'm like, I had a poster of them on my wall when I was about your age.
Yeah, exactly.
But so I have this image of John Bon Jovi in my kid's eyes versus in my own eyes, and it's like the aging fat former rock star.
Yeah, and that's what's taking place. They're not the same. They don't have the same shape anymore. And so the more and more that they asked for, these adjustments, the more and more I'm having to say, look, this material doesn't have any stretch to it. So we can only go so far with how much you're asking to be taken out of these garments and have them fit like they need to for this performance. And so, we tried to accommodate as far as we potentially could go with making them as skinny suits and making sure that they looked decent rather than aged rock stars.
This is another interesting facet of I've never thought about clothing of aging rock stars before in my life, but if you like these skinny leather pants that whatever John Bon Jovi wore in the 90s, that's like those like leather pants look kind of cool on someone that's really skinny, but like now sometimes I see walking around like older men and older women who are fat in these like leather pants, and it just looks so bad.
Oh, for sure. And the thing of the aspect of a leather pant versus a pant that's made out of a fabric that is not breathable or porous. Even leather has pores, right? Because it's an animal.
It's an animal.
So it does have a bit of fluctuation of breathing, because especially if it gets wet, it's going to stretch out. So you have the capacity to have some movement still with even leather pants. But with this fabric that doesn't have any stretch, it's just woven so tight that that's the way it's produced. You can only go so far into constraining the measurement. And so we went as far as we could and delivered what we could to them. The drummer, the thing that we were missing out with for him was the fact that his jacket wasn't finished ahead of time for the show. So I had to deliver his jacket the day of the show, which for him, it was no problem. He wasn't going to wear the jacket anyways. Because he's not going to have the mobility to do so. Everybody else, they were upset. They're like, what's the problem? All this stuff isn't delivered on time. You're delivering it the day of, hour before the show is supposed to start. And, again, the drummer's like, dude, don't listen to him. Don't worry about it. I'm not even going to put the thing on. Maybe afterwards, but for the show, there's no way. I'm the drummer. Like, I can't be restricted. And I'm like, yeah, totally get it. Appreciate that, thoughtfulness of working with the group and understanding that not everybody's wanting to play nice, so to speak. So it turned into a scenario I had to, because delivering on the day of for him, they're like, we weren't going to pay for the final payment because it was, I didn't have all of the pieces for them in that moment.
Wait. Okay, we got to keep climax of the story. So I want to be clear, understand. Everything was done perfectly and delivered perfectly, and you got the first two payments, except the drummer's jacket, which you're sending the day of.
Yep.
And then they didn't want to pay because of that. But I just want to be clear: did you send it the day of? And
yeah, I literally walked it into the arena.
You walked it into okay.
I walked it into the arena, into the dressing room.
You delivered it yourself into the dressing room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And so
it got there on time before, but because it was even though everything else was delivered earlier, and this was still delivered before it was needed, but just later, they said, we don't want to do the last payment.
Yeah, exactly. And so, they tell me it's going to be a day or so because this was a big night, and I'm used to being around concert environments, working with artists where I understand how much time it takes after a show to break down and then for them to de-stress, relax, that kind of stuff. And usually I don't expect any kind of communication until at least 2 days after an event like that. Well, 2 days pass, and I'm like, all right, fellas, where's the rest of my money? Because I delivered. Yes, there was one piece for the drummer that wasn't delivered in the time of everything else. So he was without a jacket. Everybody else had jackets and pants. He just had his pants and shirt. And so I'm like, listen, I've got to get payment. Everything was in your hands. There's no issues here. You guys literally wore them on stage. I have pictures.
But parenthetical, it's still surprising to me how often just having photographic evidence is really useful.
Absolutely.
They can't deny he had on stage. You have pictures. Okay, maybe in the world of AI they could, but there are probably lots of photos and whatever People magazine of as well of him wearing the jacket.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's one of those things where you're like, all right, fellas, got to get paid. A couple weeks go by, still haven't got a check. And I'm like, all right, look, if this thing's going to be taken care of, then we're going to end up going to court with this, because I need to get paid. I completed the job. I delivered. You wore the garments. You performed. Your show went fine. There was no issues. Nobody's pants ripped apart because you asked for them to be so tight and it was the wrong material. So nobody had any issues like that. I finished the job. I need to get paid. And they were like, no, sorry, we're not doing that. And at that point, I got turned over to their attorney.
Ooh.
So now it's no communication with the musicians any longer.
Ooh.
It's communication with the attorney.
The attorney.
And so the attorney starts trying to, do the attorney thing.
Yeah.
These are big name group. You don't want to take them to court, so on and so forth. I'm like, look, dude, I delivered. I have all of the receipts of the payments that were made through the process. And each time that they made a payment through the process, they signed off on the step as well.
That's actually very smart on your side, not just to get the payments, but to confirm that part was completed up until that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great.
And again, those spidey senses just kicking in, being like, listen, I need to make sure that everything is documented here, because I don't want there to be any loopholes or room for somebody to be able to say, you missed this thing. So
Yes.
that's going to create a null and void scenario. So I'm dealing with the attorney now, he's trying to, just kind of strong arm me from that perspective of these guys are super famous and I'm the attorney, and if you take it to court, it's going to cost you a fortune versus what you're owed. And I'm like, no, it's not, because I have all my documentation. I have my pictures. I have everything I need. We're just going to small claims court. We're not going into this big courtroom setting where we're going to have all these other people that are trying to listen to the story and make decisions on it. It's just going to be the three of us, me, you, and the judge. And he's going to see the evidence and he's going to make a decision based off of that. And they're like, well, all right, we'll go to court. So I'm like, fine, perfect. End up getting the court date. I went and did the filing, set, everything in motion, got the court date, still waiting, still trying to make contact. I'm like, hey, you guys can take care of this and we can just cancel the court date. Just let the court know that we come to an agreement and everything is settled. We don't have to move forward and don't have to waste the court's time. So they were just stalling. Day comes, it's time to go to court. I show up, I've got my briefcase full of all of my documentation, my pictures, I've got the drawings of the outfits, I've got my samples of material, everything extra above and beyond what most people would take into a court proceeding. And I see this guy walk in who looks like the attorney, kind of just assuming, and he's walking around with his cell phone out, talking to different people and getting off a call, getting on another call. And he's kind of just ignoring me, so to speak. But there's not really anybody else there that's waiting to go into the courtroom. So I'm kind of like, all right, this is their attorney. This is the guy I've been talking to on the phone. Now he's just, again, trying to assert a level of authority because he has a position and a job that pays more essentially than what I make, right? So he's just trying to assert that elitism scenario. And he's like, are you Rich? I'm like, yep, Rich. He's like, oh yeah, okay, nice to meet you. I know we've talked a few times. this is going to be a tough case if we walk in there and go ahead and go through this. I'm like, nah, I don't think so. I really don't think it is. He's like, are you sure?
Trying to scare you.
Yeah, trying to scare me, trying to, stonewall me and trying to get me to just back out and walk out the door. I'm like, I don't think it's going to be that tough. He's like, okay. I guess we'll just wait, go in. We've got 10 more minutes. I'm like, that's cool with me. I'll be right here. So time's clicking away. We're both watching the clock. And about 5 minutes beforehand, he walks back over. He goes, hey, so the guys have given me the option to make a proposal for you. We'll cut you a check right now for the amount that's owed to you. And you just sign an agreement that we paid in full. And then we'll both just go into the court and we'll tell the judge that everything is resolved. I'm like, all right, no problem. Just show me the check. Show me what the balance is on the check. And if it's the right amount, I'll sign it and sign the agreement, and we'll go in and tell the judge everything's cool. And so that's ultimately what ended up happening. They gave me the money in a check form. I signed the agreement. We walked into the courtroom. The judge goes, you're so-and-so, and then you're so-and-so representing the band. Yes, Your Honor. We're the two parties that are here. And then the attorney speaks up. He goes, Your Honor, we've come to an agreement. We don't want to waste the court's time. And Rich has agreed to take the final payment, and he signed the agreement that he is taking the final payment, and that everything doesn't need to go any further or involve you or waste your time at this point. And the judge is like, okay, Rich, is that correct? I'm like, yes, sir, it is. He goes, all right. Clacks his gavel and says, case dismissed. And that's the story.
And the check didn't bounce.
Check didn't bounce. Because I went straight from the courthouse directly to the bank where the check was drawn from. And I made sure that I was getting cash in my hand when I left that bank.
Okay, interesting story. So let's start with the ending. It's incredible to me how lawyers and businessmen and in this case the agent of the band or whoever comes up with these strategies for the band does all these strategies to try to save 10 cents.
Yeah. It's wild.
That whole story makes it really clear that this was their purposeful strategy from the beginning.
Yeah. And that's probably too my intuition kicked in, my spidey senses. It was like, hey, make sure you're extra diligent to this process because it's already not feeling right from the get-go.
I also feel like it seems like in my experience, these situations are more likely when there's a huge power imbalance between the payer and the recipient. So when someone's a bazillion dollars, super famous band with lots of money, and they hire some little guy, they're just very easy to take advantage of the little guy. And I often think that these big brands and big bands hire little guys on purpose, not only because the little guy is cheaper than the big companies, but they can push around the little guys in a way that you can't push around the other big guys.
For sure. And that's the scenario too where it's like I had a little bit of an advantage in terms of that relationship because like I said at the beginning, I was working already with Bacardi, designing outfits for the promotion. And I was working with other bands in the area and acts in the area as well. So at that time, the only reason that they heard of me was all of this movement that I was a part of at that point in time. And so it was like, yeah, I'm willing to work with you. And sure, you're this big act, but I'm not just another Joe Schmo who's trying to make it in the design business. I'm actually working in the design business. I've got all of these other clients. I'm working with these other people. You're just an added client into my body of work here, right? So it's not like I was just struggling. I had to jump on the opportunity, that kind of thing. It was, no, okay, cool, yeah, come on, we'll work together. But it wasn't one of those things where it was like I needed the money to, take this client on. It was a scenario of, okay, I'm already doing these things. I'm already working with these other people. And this is just another opportunity to work with some more of those people, right? So again, having that early on experience with my cousin playing pro ball and realizing that he's just a regular guy, and he gets to go out and play on a field that, everybody comes to watch, but he's just the same dude that I would see walking out of the dressing room after the game if he'd just taken a shower. It wasn't any different. So the bigger the company or the bigger the act, it never made any difference to me because I wasn't looking for that to, put a feather in my cap type scenario. Sure, goes into the portfolio, goes on the resume, but it's not like I'm running around touting that I've designed for all of these people. It's just what I do. I'm a designer. I can venture out into various industries just based on my initial skill set. So, those are those types of things where it's like, I think I'm going to stick to my guns here. You guys are going to work based off of the way I'm going to set up the parameters. I'm going to give you what you want, but I've got a little bit more control.
But I'll define the parameters.
Exactly.
These are great lessons. There's some other nuggets in your story that are worth drawing out. I love the detail of like the lawyer pacing around on his call, having important calls, and then going, "It's going to be really hard. It's going to be really hard." And then like 1 minute before you're going, okay, we'll just pay you off. I really think that shows the degree to which so much of this behavior is just like trying to scare people on purpose and threatening people on purpose. It's kind of like just a game in their head. How can you save the most money? Oh, by the way, another part of the game is they probably don't even expect anyone to actually take them to small claims court.
Right. That is the thing. They don't expect somebody to go the extra mile, to take the extra steps to make sure that they get their payment, because they've got this thing in their head where we're so big and, we've got these attorneys that are dealing with us that take care of most of our negotiating and all that kind of stuff. And what's even funnier on top of that is, the beginning of the story was I met all of the guys. There was no attorney there at that point. There was no attorney in play. It was just the guys. And so when you have that type of a scenario that starts off the working relationship where you already have the contact to those individuals, and then later on they try to throw somebody in as a buffer, it's like, look, you guys have already showed who you were to me one-on-one. Throwing in a buffer is not going to change what that initial experience was. It's not going to change the difference. It's not going to scare me off at this point in time, because you came to me. You met at my location, came into my space, right? You didn't have an entourage with you. You guys all showed up together. You came in different cars, but you all came in together to my space. I didn't go to you. You came to me. And so, those are the types of things where over the course of the career, you start to make sure you pay attention to those details right off the bat, so you don't continue having different scenarios like that. But unfortunately, I've had quite a few that are just like, oh my gosh, really? Another one? I've got to deal with this again.
So many good lessons. I have an utterly random question about clothing for musicians.
Shoot.
So absolutely nothing to do with client horror stories. So when you did the clothing, or in this case, or let's say on average in general, is it like one set of clothing just that they use for the whole tour, or is like multiple different ones or different options? I'm curious.
Yeah, it just depends on what the client's looking for. Some of them want like 5 or 6 outfits made for the tour, so they can change up.
They can change it
after 5 or 6 nights. So they're not wearing the same thing. These guys, they just wanted one for a specific show, so it was just one outfit that was put together for them. But yeah, you can have one outfit, you can have multiple outfits, you can have multiple pieces that can be mixed and matched. It's just a matter of what the client's looking for, and then giving them that bit of extra information so that they can realize it.
Still nothing to do with client horror stories. I'm curious to know what is like the weirdest, wackiest, most fun outfit that you're ever hired to make for a band. I'm just fascinated by this. I love rock music. I went to a whole bunch of concerts when I was in high school.
Yeah, no, exactly. There's not really an outrageous outfit that I've designed. There was a client where one of the other band members wanted some custom outfits made because of the name of the tour that was going to be taking place. So we ended up designing some outfits based around the theme of the tour. And the lead singer didn't even want the outfits. Like, it was one of the guitarists that wanted this look. And so I worked with the guitarist one-on-one, came up with these specific outfits for the tour based off of the concept of the tour name. I probably more extreme concept and design was what I was working with Bacardi.
Like, what did you do with Bacardi?
Well, I was designing promotional outfits for all of their promo.
Promotional outfits?
Yeah.
So for like the promo people, like meaning like the girls that stand in the street and hand out.
Yeah.
I had no clue they'd centralized outfits for that. That's amazing.
Yeah. And so just one campaign.
Please.
One campaign that I worked on for them probably was the most creative thought process that I had to dive into. Was they had this concept called "Fight for Your Right" for Bacardi. And so I'm like, all right, well, if it's going to be a fight theme, fight for your right for Bacardi, then they need to have boxing outfits.
By the way, that's funny. It's your first instinct. I hear that phrase, and my first instinct is they need to look like the Beastie Boys.
Well, that at the time, interesting enough, that's when Beastie Boys were really hot.
It's probably riffing on the song.
Yes, that's exactly what was happening. And so I'm like, all right, well, Beastie Boys, they have a completely different thing going on in terms of persona versus what Bacardi has in the marketplace. Bacardi's a little bit more higher up scale versus the Beastie Boys crushing beer cans on their head while they're up across the stage. So yeah, I designed these boxing outfits, and so they had skirts that looked like boxing shorts. They had tops that looked like what a female boxer would wear, and then they had the robes, the boxing robes. So that was a little bit of a creative moment for me, where I got to really start to think out of the box compared to what it was actually for.
that's one of the things that makes your job so much fun, when you do get these creative challenges like that.
Yeah, exactly. Those creative counts, when they want something different and it's out of the norm, those are the ones that are the most fun.
I was just speaking to a chef the other day, a friend, and he was telling me that he really likes it when he's like a high-end chef that's hired to cook for us for private events, and he said he really likes it when he gets constraints. No, these people are kosher vegans, and where he like knows nothing about it, because if you don't get these forced constraints, you kind of just do what you're good at and you enjoy. But new forced constraints force you to use your knowledge and understanding to come up with new creative solutions, like new creative recipes in his case, and new creative outfits in your case.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing too with chefs. I love being around chefs because they have a complete different way of thinking, because they're thinking of ultimately what's the experience going to be once that dish gets into your mouth.
Yes.
Right? So it's the presentation first, then it's how that's going to taste, and then how is that going to make you feel afterward. So it's a process that's drawn out that many people don't even think about. And their joy comes more from the reaction after the bite is taken than it does with the whole process. The whole process for them is the build-up. Once that bite is taken and they see the expression and the response from the person who's eating the dish, that's where they're like, oh yeah, hit the mark.
Yeah. That makes sense. It also reminds me of what you do, because in both of them, like fashion design, like you do, and cooking, you just have to understand these rules and these principles, and then understanding rules and principles, you can combine them in new ways. So chefs would be like, oh, there's this constraint, but this type of thing is good when it's paired with that type of thing. So, and like I know absolutely nothing about fashion, but it's like, oh, this type of color as a primary color looks good when paired with this other type of color as a secondary color. And you'll have an understanding of these things that I won't. So it's all about taking these rules and recombining them in new ways.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, the way that you're explaining it is the exact way that the process goes. So, you know, you do have somewhat of an understanding already. It's just a matter of, you know, dialing in the technical components of putting it.
And so I think I have this general understanding, but for example, I don't know any of the rules. Like I would think before I know what color goes with what other color. But you just have internalized a bazillion rules. Not only the color rules, like, oh, this sort of material when it's paired with that sort of material looks good, and oh, this sort of material with that is more likely to rip, and that one's less likely to rip. You just have very internalized all these different things that let you come up with your creative output.
Yeah, you know, and I guess that's just the gift that I was given early on as a creative. I didn't really go to technical school for any of the fashion stuff at all. School I went to, I was trying to get a graphic design degree, and ultimately ended up dropping out just because I was failing everything except the classes. So I was just like, there's no way I'm taking this stuff over and paying more money to fail again. So I just dropped out. But the fashion stuff, that came about just because that gift of being able to draw. I could always just draw exactly what I wanted to see finished as the final product. And that's how I dove into it.
Wow, you have a gift and you ran with it. Amazing.
Yeah.
Rich, this has been such an interesting episode, like a great story. And then I also enjoyed learning about the fashion industry and the trade-offs and everything we're discussing. This has been so much fun. Thank you for your time, and it's been wonderful getting to know you.
Absolutely cool. I appreciate you having me on. It was great talking with you and just chit-chatting.
Yeah, same here. And everyone who's been watching this, thank you for watching until the very end, if you've made it this far. And if you have, we hope you've enjoyed it as much as Rich and I have had enjoyed recording it. Until next time.